You are looking live.
Here comes the play. Goodman at the free throw line. Jumper.
He broke his ankles. He is Houdini.
Mickey Mantle don't care about you, so why should you care about him? Nobody cares.
That's not a good call. No.
You don't like that call.
I don't like that call.
Woo, 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 woo. Not so fast.
And we are ready to go, and we are live this morning on Sunday morning. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're having a good weekend, a good day. Whenever you're watching this, welcome back to Mike's Madness. And in today's stream, which there's 0 viewers live at the moment right now, but this will be going up on YouTube later today. So if you're watching this on YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to Mike's Madness. This is part 1 of a few parts of the stream that I did on Sunday, January 24th. Getting started on NFL Championship Sunday. Just before we get started here, I'm going to lay out the plan, kind of what we got going on today. In a few minutes here, I'm going to be talking about the new NFL hires. All of the vacancies have been filled except for the Houston Texans. And I didn't. The main reason I didn't get to a reaction on those right away is because I thought that maybe the Texans would fill their position in that amount of time, and I was kind of waiting for them to do that before I went on and kind of, you know, went over all the new coaching jobs. But that didn't happen, so I figured, hey, I'm streaming today. What better way, what better time, and what better way to talk about those than in a couple hour stream. So we're gonna get to those. There were quite a few teams that got new head coaches this offseason, and I mean not even this offseason, but for their offseason, I guess. And then that'll take us. We'll start that in again about 10 minutes. And at about 12 o'clock, 11:45, 12, whatever, we get to about that time, we'll have my Eagles correspondent, as I guess I should call him, because you know how on like the news channels or whatever, they have the White House correspondent and the chief medical correspondent and all those you know, those guys. I guess you could call Zach my Eagles correspondent because he knows a lot of specifics about all the Eagles stuff going on. And what a better time! I can't think of a better time to get him on the phone at a time when the Eagles are getting a new head coach, starting over, if you will, not totally, but you know, there's going to be a lot of debate about who should start, Wentz or Hurts, and all that good stuff. And then we'll also get to his picks about the championship games today as well. So don't worry, we're not totally leaving that out of the discussion we're going to have with him a little later on. Again, that'll be at about 12, and then at about 12:30, we're going to get into some other news that came out yesterday and this morning in the NFL, obviously. One of them is that the Detroit Lions and Matt Stafford are probably expected to part ways this offseason, so that will bring some, and it's not like they're going to release him. It's not that his contract was up. They would have to trade him if he wants out, so that brings up an interesting scenario as to what they're going to do with him. Who are they going to trade for? What are they going to do for their next quarterback? All that good stuff as well. And the Texans, their head coaching job is still on the move. So they have not hired a guy yet. They did some interviews this week, but kind of some questionable, like, not questionable names, but like I don't know if the people that they interviewed were necessarily you know, really people that they were considering hiring. I think that was just kind of one of those things, like, you know what, in the spare time we'll interview those guys, because I really feel like they really want one of the assistant coaches or coordinators or whatever out of Buffalo or Kansas City. I think that's where they are looking at. But with those two teams still in the playoffs and still playing games, you can't interview them as much as they really would want to. So I think with who they interviewed most recently, it was more one of those things that, they they just did it so that they could get some interviews in case the other ones didn't work out. Like that was like their not their plan B, not their plan C, but more like their plan D and E, if you will. Like I don't feel like the guys that they interviewed most recently were guys that they are seriously considering to hire, because the guys that they interviewed most recently, one of them I just don't see being a coach at the NFL level just yet, and the other one I feel like he's kind of done in terms of his coaching career, his NFL coaching career, if you will. But we'll get to all that a little bit later, as I spill coffee all over myself. What a classic. Speaking of coffee and drink and food, I have been eating these things for breakfast recently. And they're by Pillsbury. They're called Heat and Eat. And they have them in brownies, so I guess you can make brownies if you want or whatever. But I've been getting the cinnamon roll ones, and they literally take 30 seconds in the microwave to make. You pop them in the microwave, 30 seconds, take it out, and you put the little frosting on top. It's the same frosting as if you like toaster strudels or whatever, right? 30 seconds to make, and they are the most delicious things I've ever had for breakfast. And the reason I'm saying this is because like they've just been so good, and I just don't understand how they can be so good for taking 30 seconds to make. It's quite remarkable. And I'm one of those people that wakes up for breakfast, or wakes up in the morning and is hungry for breakfast right away, but I'm still too tired and too lazy to get up and make anything that's going to be good, and I don't feel like getting up and going out and driving all around and getting something. So these are perfect for me. Wake up, pop it in the microwave, 30 seconds, they come out and they are ready to eat. It's not that it's too hot, so you have to wait till it cools down. You can eat it right after you take it out of the microwave. It is highly recommend. 10 out of 10. Would eat again. I love them, and I think they're in like the I believe they're over by the frozen food section at the supermarket. Where they have like where they have those like Pillsbury pastries and everything, like in the can that you open up and all that good stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to say that because those things are so good, and it's like, you ever eaten something that was like so surprisingly good that you had to tell somebody and you didn't care who it was? You didn't care if it was the 3 people watching your YouTube channel, or if it was the 3 people at your class that don't listen to you and don't like you anyway. That's like, I just had to tell you. So there's that. But yeah, after we talk about the guys that the Texans interviewed, we're gonna get into last but definitely not least, the NFL championship games today. The Bucks and the Packers and the Bills and the Chiefs playing all today. Winners go on to Super Bowl 55 2 weeks from today, or will play in the Super Bowl 2 weeks from today. So back to what we were going to talk about, starting up here, the new NFL head coaches. So the Jacksonville Jaguars hired, if I can get this thing going here. What's going on here? What? Why is it not working? Oh my god. What? Why is it not working, bro? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Hold on a second. Jesus. Okay, there we go. I hate this so much. This takes so long. I don't understand this. I had trouble with this recently where I would have the second screen up and I would change the graphic and it wouldn't change right away, so I had to go back in and like refresh, if you will. So my apologies to the one person who's watching this morning. This will go up on YouTube later, so you didn't really miss much. I was talking about cinnamon, heat and eat, and coffee. So and I was laying out what we were going to talk about today. So anyway, one of the first jobs, or the first head coach vacancies that was filled this off season, even though we're still kind of in the postseason, was the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they hired Urban Meyer, which was awfully surprising to me because, like, if you've followed Urban Meyer at all, and you know anything about him, you know that he retired from Ohio State, right? And his reasoning for retiring from Ohio State was because of health issues and the stress that it brought upon him was just too much. And he wanted to take a step back and spend some time with his family, right? And even before he even was talking about being a head coach in the NFL level, I just found it kind of weird how he wanted to take a step away from football and spend more time with his family. And then I would see him on these pregame shows all the time. I was like, what are you even talking about? Like, how does that make any sense? So, I don't know. I feel like something odd was going on at Ohio State, and he had to make something up so that it looked real and looked good. So I don't know what was really going on there. And excuse me, my nose is really itchy for some reason. So yeah, I don't know that it makes too much sense to retire from college football because of the stress and the health issues that he had, and then step up to the NFL level. Like, does he not think that the NFL level is going to be stressful? And I put a tweet out about this and saying basically the same thing, and somebody replied to me and said, well, think about it this way. In college, you are dealing with a bunch of young kids, right? Young punk kids, and, they've got ego issues and attitude issues and all that good stuff. And you have to worry about eligibility and recruiting and this, that, and the other thing. And sure, that makes a lot of sense to me that the college level, I'm not saying the college level is easy to be coaching at, especially one of those, the blue blood schools at Ohio State for football. I'm not saying that's easy, but if that was too tough on you, why go to the NFL? Like, the logic doesn't connect for me. And then someone, that same person said, in the NFL, you're dealing with men, you're grown men, and they're professionals, and it's not so much you're trying to manage kids at that level. And that was an interesting point that they brought up, but I don't know if I totally agree with it, because look at the Steelers. Look at Juju Smith-Schuster. You need to tell me he's a mature, grown man dancing on other teams' logos, doing TikToks before the game? And I'm not saying that Juju Smith-Schuster is a guy that is the epitome of a few guys on every team, but like, I mean, look at some quarterbacks. They are some, not even quarterbacks, but receiver, anybody, players. If they don't get enough, some of them, if they don't get enough playing time, they start whining, complaining, and they want out, right? Just for whatever reason, there's always something going on, it seems like, for some teams. And, it would be one thing if Urban Meyer was taking over for a Bill Belichick, right? And he kind of had some key pieces already there, and all I had to do was plug in a few other pieces, right? That would be something where I would look at that and say, all right, that makes a little bit more sense to me. But for the Jacksonville Jaguars, for him to go there, like, they don't have a quarterback. They have a young running back. They have a couple, some young receivers, right? And I'm not saying they're not talented. They are talented, but they're young, right? So they still have time to develop. They don't have much of a defense, right? Like, this team is, in a sense, like, you're getting the bottom of the barrel here, and you've got to kind of build up a successful team. And, like, again, I'm not saying that these guys, that the young guys that they have, I'm not saying they're not talented. They are, but they're just young. So they still need to develop their game a little bit, but, like, they still need a quarterback. They still need a defense. They still need a lot of pieces. And for a new coach who retired from the college level because of stress issues and health issues, I don't know if he can handle it. I don't know if he's going to be able to do it. And I feel like after 2 years of not being successful, and 2 years of not being, good, if you will, after 2 years out, he's going to be like, oh man, it's too stressful, I'm out, my heart, oh my God, So, like, I just don't know if this was a hire for the Jaguars that's going to end up making sense, in 3 or 4 years, right? This isn't something that I think is going to, I don't know. And I'm not saying that this guy's not a good coach, right? I just don't know if he has that drive anymore, right? To be a really good coach. And Like, sure, 10 years ago at Ohio State, and even 5 years ago or whatever at Ohio State, he was great. He was one of the best head coaches in the country. But, like, the college, and here's another thing that I don't know about. The college level, being a college coach and being successful doesn't mean you're going to be able to come over to the NFL and have that same success. I mean, look, Chip Kelly came over from college. He was a great college coach. Came over to the NFL and was, for lack of a better word, he was a failure. Jim Harbaugh, he only lasted 4 years at San Francisco before he went back to the college game. Right? He came from Stanford, and then he coached San Francisco. And sure, he led him to a Super Bowl. They didn't win the Super Bowl, but he led him to a Super Bowl, which is, I mean, hey, that's seems pretty successful to me. But look at the other 3 years that he was there. Not a lot of great things went on in San Francisco in Jim Harbaugh's time, except apart from that one Super Bowl. So he lasted there for 4 years before he went back to college, and now he's the head coach of Michigan, and he's even struggling there. And some other guys that came across, came across from the college game, and were not as successful as they were in college. Steve Spurrier and Nick Saban are a couple other names that I found in some research that of what coaches came from college to the NFL and just were not successful in the NFL as much as they were in college. And I feel like and there's plenty of other names, right, that came across from college to NFL as head coaches that just weren't that successful. But those are the most notable names, right? So, and I just feel like more times than not, coaches that were really successful in the college game, they come over to the NFL, and I feel like more times than not, those guys just don't have, they are not able to be as successful in the NFL. And there's many reasons for that, I would imagine, but I feel like probably the most thing, the number one reason for that is because, think about it this way: you do something for so long, you do one thing one way for so long, you're just used to doing it that way, and then you go into a different system and you try to do things the way you are so used to doing them. It just isn't going to work. And I feel like that is probably the number one cause of all these guys that come across from college to the NFL for head coaches, and they just aren't that successful. And that same principle is there for college football players as well. All those Ohio State quarterbacks that were so great at Ohio State, Braxton Miller, Cardale Jones, J.T. Barrett, Dwayne Haskins, they were so great in college. And I guess that they were just trained to do, play at the college level, right? And they were so good at that, and they come across to the NFL and their game just didn't transfer all that well. It's that same principle for coaches. And I just don't know that Urban Meyer is going to be one of those guys that you look back at and say, oh man, how did no other NFL team hire him before? I just feel like there's a reason behind that. And, I feel like the Jaguars thought, hey, you know what? This guy knows football. Let's hire him. Whatever, right? Doesn't matter if he's going to be good at the NFL or not. Doesn't matter that he has absolutely zero NFL coaching, experience. At least I don't think he does. He's been at Ohio State for as long as I can remember. So, I'm not a huge fan of this hire. All right, that's if you couldn't get that from me, I'm not a huge fan of it. Will this team be successful or not successful under Urban Meyer? I think if they are going to be successful, it's going to take a while, so they have to be patient. But I more likely than not, I don't think they're going to be successful. I just don't think he has what it takes to be a good NFL coach. I don't think he can lead an NFL team to be successful, especially a team that has, a lot of places that need to be patched up. And also I feel like I don't care who you put in the Jaguars head coaching position. I just feel like the Jaguars are going to be one of those teams that are never successful, never a contender. You know what I mean? I feel like no matter what, the Jaguars are always a team that's going to be bottom of the barrel. and I, you know what I mean? I just feel like that's them. You know what I mean? I just don't feel like the Jaguars are ever going to be a team that you look at and say, oh, that's a Super Bowl team. I mean, who knows? Maybe in 30 years, but Urban Meyer's not going to, you're not going to wait on a coach for 30 years to be, take that to a successful spot. So And I know that I said that there are a lot of coaches that came from college to the NFL that weren't all that successful. But there are a lot that that have been. You know, look at Pete Carroll. He came from college. He came from USC, I believe. Look at how good he's been at Seattle. You look at Steve Mariucci. He came from college. Jimmy Johnson, Dennis Green, Tom Coughlin, Bill Walsh. Like, those guys started out as not started out, but they were college head coaches before they came to the NFL. And look at how successful those guys were. So I'm not saying it can't be done. I just feel like the odds are really stacked against Herb here. So, and sure, there are a few coaches right now that are in the NFL that were college coaches before. Matt Rule was the Baylor head coach. Now he's coaching the Panthers. This year was his first year, but still, the Panthers were not that great, and they had some talent. You know, Teddy Bridgewater, he's pretty good. DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, you know, Christian McCaffrey. Have you ever heard of him? Like, you know what I mean? Like, they had a lot of guys that were talented, and for them to be 4-12 or whatever they were is kind of shocking. So, like, that is one of the reasons why I'm feeling the way I am. And another one is Cliff Kingsberry, who's the head coach of the Cardinals. He used to be the Texas Tech head coach. And look at his team. They did make the playoffs this year. They've got Kyler Murray, who is a rising star. He was in the MVP race for a little bit earlier this year. And again, he's young, so he's going to keep getting better. But you've got DeAndre Hopkins. He's pretty good. Larry Fitzgerald, he's old, but he's still pretty good. Kenyon Drake is pretty solid, I would say. And Christian Kirk is pretty decent as well. And that's just their offense. Their defense has some pretty darn good guys as well. Buda Baker. Is Patrick Peterson still on that team? I feel like he is. But he's been around for a little bit. So, like, that team has talent. And I understand that division was real tough with the Rams and the Seahawks this year. But, like, they show that they had what it took this year to beat those teams that out of the NFC West that made the playoffs. And, like, I just, for the Cardinals to have all that talent and not be better than they were is another one where you kind of are left scratching your head and thinking, how are they not so talented? And, you know, I don't know. Like, is that just one of those things where college coaches are just, you know, not going to be able to, you know, they're not likely to be successful in the NFL? I don't know, but it seems that way. So I don't know. Again, for the Jaguars, you know, who knows? Maybe they turn it around. Maybe this is where their franchise really starts to turn things around and they start to get better. I don't know, but with the way things have gone and with the way that college coaches have done in the NFL, I just don't see it happening. So I don't know. I don't think that this is going to be something that is I don't think this is something that's going to work out for the Jaguars. And here we go again, where it's not loading the next graphic. Oh my goodness. Here we go. Am I gonna have to do this every single time? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. This is ridiculous. Oh, here we go. Unbelievable. I hate this. This one gave me that many issues last week or 2 weeks ago. Okay, well, another job that was filled recently was the New York Jets, Robert Sala. And, you know, and if you never heard of him, you're like, who's that guy? What's his deal? What's his, who's this guy, right? Well, he was the defensive coordinator for the 49ers, and you may look at this guy and say, man, he looks kind of familiar. Well, he was the guy on the 49ers sideline the past few years that was constantly losing his mind and like jumping around like a crazy guy, and like, yeah, that guy. You know who I'm talking about. So he got hired for the Jets head coaching job, and I'm going to be upfront with you. I love this hire. I think this is a great hire for the New York Jets. And if you've watched any Jets football last year, or this past year, I should say, Adam Gase was their head coach, right? And if you've ever watched Jets football this past year, you'll notice that Adam Gase didn't have a whole lot of energy, right? He was a little bit sleepy, right? Some may think that he was related to Joe Biden or something, but he just wasn't very energetic. Like, he just seemed like he had no passion, he had no care in the world, and no drive to be a head coach. Like, he didn't seem like he really wanted to lead a team to be all that successful. And again, that's one of those hires that, as I was kind of talking about, you don't want to hire somebody and then, a few years from now you look back at it and say, what were they thinking? This is a prime example of that. You hire Adam Gase for your head coach and you think it's great and all that, and then you look back at it and you're thinking, man, what were they thinking? What was that? Like, what in the world were they thinking with that hire? That's what you want to avoid. And again, this is a great hire. I love this for the New York Jets. This guy has shown as a coordinator that he has a million times more energy than Adam Gase did as a head coach. And if there's anybody that can turn the Jets around and make this Jets team a legit team for the first time since they had Mark Sanchez and Rex Ryan running the show, this is the guy. Robert Sala is the guy that can get the Jets back on track. And I mean, hey, again, this is probably the best time, to have a head coach. This is the best time to really start to get things together, because now more than ever the AFC East is going to be up for grabs for years to come, right? The Patriots are I don't think they're going to be at the top anymore. They've kind of shown that this year. With Brady being gone, it just doesn't seem like Belichick has what it takes to have that same success without him. And sure, the Bills this year won the AFC East, and they look like a team you look at and say, oh, geez, how's anybody ever going to beat them in the AFC East? Well, I think, look, just because they're good this year doesn't mean they're going to rule the AFC East next year. And the Dolphins are starting to get good, so this is the time for the Jets to get things rolling here, because if they don't, they're going to be bad for a while. And it's going to be rough for New York, and it has been for a while. So, is this Robert Sala New York Jets relationship going to be successful or not? It's hard to tell for me. And even though I kind of blushed about how much I loved this hire for them, as I've said, just because you hire somebody that is talented and that has a lot of football knowledge doesn't mean it's going to be successful. I mean, look at Urban Meyer. As I mentioned, he was an absolute great college head coach. Doesn't mean he's going to be great in the NFL. And that's a whole different thing. But for this guy to be a coordinator, a former coordinator, he was really great at what he did at San Francisco. That doesn't mean that it's going to transfer to being a great head coach. And like, some guys are just meant to be coordinators. You know what I mean? Like, some guys you think are great coordinators, you say, oh man, I bet you they would make for a great head coach. And they just don't turn out to be that way. Look at Matt Patricia. He was great at the Patriots, but part of that was probably because of Bill Belichick, not really so much because of him. And there have been numerous other positions or numerous other head coaches that were former coordinators that it just didn't work out, and then they go back to being coordinators, and then they're just great. They're just absolutely great again. And you kind of wonder, like, how are they so good at being a coordinator and not so good at being a head coach? And it's just, being a coordinator and being a head coach is two totally different things. Being the coordinator is saying, hey, I got this game plan. Head coach, whatever your name is, head coach blank, what do you think? Here's what I got. What do you think? And as the head coach, you're like that final decision, like, here, coach, this is my game plan. Let's go over it. And, you kind of sit down and maybe you say, well, I don't know about this. Maybe we should change this. And the coordinator's like, okay, what should we change it to? And you're like, I don't know. And it's going to be tough for him to change out from that defensive coordinator mindset and try to kind of be the head coach of all those the main three phases of football. And that's going to be tough for anybody, but that is just kind of the reasoning behind why I'm not so sure if this is going to be very successful for the Jets or not. Like I said, you can have a great hire and it just doesn't work out. Personally, a few years ago when the Jets hired Todd Bowles, I thought that was a great hire, and I thought that I honestly thought that they didn't give him they didn't give him much of a chance, and I thought that he was a guy that give him a few more years, and he probably could have. I feel like Todd Bowles could have taken this Jets team this year, and taken them from 2-14 and probably turned them into like. I don't want to say 8-8, but they probably could have turned them into 7-9 maybe. Like, I feel like Todd Bowles it wasn't a good decision to let him go, because now look at him. He's a coordinator on the Bucs, and look at how good they are. So, and again, maybe that's just one of those times where you look at that and say, well, he was a great coordinator, but he's just never going to be a good head coach. Let him be a coordinator. That's where he's going to, be successful. But look, if this works out, then great for the Jets. It's awesome. But if not, the carousel is going to keep spinning for the Jets head coaches, because, and honestly, I hope that they give this guy a chance. I hope they give Robert Sala a good chance, because I feel like they get some guys that, give them a few years, they might turn the team into something, and they have one bad year and they let him go already. And it's like, give the guy a chance, for crying out loud. You can't expect to be a Super Bowl contender in your first year. Give him some time. So I hope that they give this guy a chance, because Sala is definitely the guy that can lead the Jets to a turnaround. And look, they've got the second pick in the draft this year. They don't need a new quarterback unless they want to trade Darnold. So and maybe get Justin Fields or whatever. So they've just got to develop other aspects of their football team a lot more. They've got to develop their running backs, their receivers a little bit more. I mean, they've got some talented receivers, the tight ends, the blocking, the defense. It's a lot of work cut out for Robert Sala. But for a team that primarily needs a lot of defensive help, I would feel comfortable knowing that this guy is the head coach of my team if I'm a Jets fan. Now, let's get to. It's not going to change. Sweet. Man, why won't it change, bro? This is so frustrating. Okay, it's like I had to click change scene or whatever, and then it changes as soon as I do it. So, well, it was only a matter of time until we got to this character, and he's only been the head coach for the Detroit Lions for about 4 days, and he has already turned himself into quite the character, I might say. In the first two guys that I talked about, I had a lot to say about, like, I think about this is going to be a good hire, not a good hire, the team going to be successful or not. With this guy, I really don't know. I have no clue. Any kind of sports knowledge that I have, like, I feel like just throwing that out the window with this guy, because I feel like this guy can either turn out to be a genius, or he can turn out to be a guy that you're like, what? In what world would you hire that guy? And then it's like, well, the Detroit Lions did, and you're like, oh, of course they did. But time's going to tell with this guy, and if you're confused and you don't really know what I'm talking about, and you're like, what's the big deal with this guy? Well, let me read you a quote from his. I don't know what just happened upstairs, but I think they're doing construction upstairs or something. But yeah, let me read you a quote from from his opening presser as where they do the interview in the press conference or whatever when he gets hired. He said, quote, and it started off great, right? It started off like, all right, this is going somewhere. Like, this guy sounds knowledgeable. And then he just went off the track. So a little warning. So here we go. Quote, here's what I do know is that the team is going to take on the identity of this city. The city's been down and found a way to get up. It's found a way to overcome adversity. So this team's going to be built on, and this is where it starts to get off track. So that first bit, you thought, wow, that sounds great. This guy, like, this guy knows something. Like, this guy has like some real smarts, and he knows what he's doing, right? So, it started off so eloquently and so nicely put. Like, oh, this team's been through, or this city's been through so much, and they've got knocked down, and they can get back up, and we can overcome adversity, and it sounded so great. And then he kind of went off the tracks a little bit, and he said, so this team's going to be built on, we're going to kick you in the teeth, and when you punch us back, we're going to smile at you. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up, and on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off. And we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap. And we're going to get up, and it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. So before we're going to be the last one standing, all right? That's going to be the mentality. See what I mean? Like, this guy could be a genius or he could be stupid. There's no in between. So, I don't know, but again, this could turn out to be great, and this could turn out to be the guy that really turns things around for the Lions. But I don't know. I don't know what you want me to say. The guy talking about, and obviously he's not being serious. Before that starts like, oh, Mike, he's not being serious. You really think he's going to bite off a kneecap? How stupid are you? Like, stop. Before you even start, just stop. I know he's using figurative speech and all that good stuff, but where else have you heard a coach talk like that in his opening interview as a new head coach? I haven't, personally, so I apologize if you're like, well, this happens all the time, Mike. What are you talking about? But see what I mean? Like, again, this guy could be a genius or he could be absolutely stupid. I don't know which one it is, but there's no in between. And we're going to get back to the Lions a little bit later because they made a hire for one of their coordinators yesterday that really left me scratching my head and made me think, well, this is going to give us a real good look at how good this team's really going to be and how successful they're going to be. So, again, I don't really know what to say about this hire. Like, I don't know. Like, I've never heard that kind of I've never heard that kind of aggressiveness out of a new head coach. And oh man, Twitter had a field day with this one. This was great. So and I really should have had it up, but I don't. There was one that said, what is this guy even saying, or something like that. It was like, this is the guy they gave a 6-year contract to or whatever. And somebody said, well, does anybody know what he said? And there was somebody that said, it was that quote from that song from Kanye West and Jay-Z, that there's a bad word in the title, but it ends in Paris. You know what I'm talking about? He said, nobody knows what he's saying, but it's provocative. It gets the people going. And then there was another quote from that song, Tub Thumping, where it's like, we get knocked down, but we get up again, and you're never gonna keep us down. And then it said, they said, and then we're gonna bite your kneecap off, and then when you knock us down, we're gonna get back up, we're gonna have a whiskey drink, and then you get knocked down, we're gonna get back up, we're gonna have a lager drink, and the quote from that song. So that was funny. That was great. The Twitter had a real field day with this guy's opening interview. So again, I have no clue what to say. I don't know what there is to say much more than this guy. Again, could be a genius, or he could be an absolute head case. I have no clue. I really don't know what to say. So yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know what you want me to say about that guy, but hope it works out for them, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, that was weird. So the Atlanta Falcons, they made a hiring, and they hired Arthur Smith. And if you don't know who Arthur Smith is, well, he was the offensive coordinator most recently with the Tennessee Titans. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know a whole much about Arthur Smith. But guess what? Derrick Henry's doesn't play for Atlanta. Jonnu Smith doesn't play for the Falcons. What's the other guy? Corey Davis doesn't play for the Falcons. But you know who does? Julio Jones. Might have heard of him. Calvin Ridley. Those guys are pretty good. Russell Gage Jr. is another young guy. Or not another, but he's a young guy on that team that he could really develop into a real talent. So look out for him. And Hayden Hurst. He was a Baltimore Raven. I liked his game. And now he's on the Falcons, and he's young, but he's a guy that can develop into a good tight end. So this offense has a lot of weapons, and don't overlook Todd Gurley just yet either. His days are not done in the NFL. He still has got much more to go. So with all that talent on the offensive end, and sure, you can look at their defense and say, well, and with a lot of teams that are hiring new coaches this offseason, you look at them and say, well, they've got some talent on offense, but they really need to focus on developing their defense a little bit more. And this team is another example of that. And the only question I have about the Falcons offense is Matt Ryan going to be around for much? How much longer is Matt Ryan going to be around for? Is he the guy that is going to be there for a while? Is he going to be, their Aaron Rodgers, where he's there for, 60 years or whatever, right? Is he going to be Tom Brady for them? And I just don't see it. I've never been a huge fan of Matt Ryan, so I think that, honestly, I think they should cut their losses and get a new quarterback. I think they could trade for Deshaun Watson. They could trade for Dak Prescott, depending on what goes on there. They could trade for Carson Wentz, depending on what goes on there. And don't overlook getting a quarterback in the draft either. So, if they get a good quarterback, this team might start to turn the corner and be really good. And I'm not saying Matt Ryan is done. I'm not saying he's washed up, but I feel like if you know that your quarterback's not going to be around for much longer, and he hasn't necessarily led you to the most successful of years, why? And this team has been atrocious with blowing leads and everything. Why would you just keep him around, and why would you keep being bad when you could just cut your losses and start over right now? You know what I mean? It's like a building that is kind of falling apart, or a car that's falling apart, and you take it to the mechanic and he says, well, this will last you about 2 more years. And you think about, well, in that 2 years, how much is it going to cost to maintain the car to a point where I can drive it, pass inspection, not get me into a car crash, right? Why not just cut my losses and get a new car, right? The longer I have it, the less value it'll have. So it's that same principle. Like, why shouldn't I would love to hear why you think the Falcons shouldn't cut their losses and start over with a new quarterback, because I can't find a reason for them not to do that. So, but yeah, there you go. Arthur Smith is the new head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. So with an offensive-minded guy having a lot of offensive talent, that could be good, but I'm interested to see on what he will do with their defense. Is this a guy that's going to be able to get their defense on track? I don't know. For it being an offensive-minded guy, that'll be interesting to me to see how that goes. And then I'm gonna have to do this again where I change the thing or whatever. So let's do that. Okay. The LA Chargers finally got rid of that horrific Anthony Lynn, and we're going to talk about Anthony Lynn a little bit later. And you're probably thinking, why? Well, we'll get to him a little bit later, I guess. The Chargers hired Brandon Staley. Again, this is one of those guys that I've never heard of until the Chargers named him their head coach. It seems like if you know, and he was the defensive coordinator for the Rams, and it seems like if you know Sean McVay, if you shake Sean McVay's hand, if your name rhymes with Sean McVay, seems like anything like that, you'll get a head coaching job in the NFL. That's just how it seems. So it's really weird to me. So again, I've never heard of this guy. The Rams defense was pretty darn good, I guess. They had Aaron Donald, and he was pretty good. So I don't care if it's Brandon Staley, Brendan Maley, Schmanden Bailey. I don't care what his name is. This Chargers team has talent everywhere. They've got some good guys on defense. Not guys that you're going to say, oh man, we need to have him, and you try to make a trade for him. But they've got some guys that you can make a living on defense off of. And their offense speaks for itself. Justin Herbert is a young guy. He only got done his first year as an NFL quarterback. But look at how good he was on a trash team and with a trash coach. Look at how good he was. They've got a solid running back core. They've got really good receivers, really good tight end. Like, their offense is set to go. They really don't need any more help on offense. I guess you could just say and I don't even know if they need so much as help on defense either. I don't really know how much help they do need on defense. I feel like all the Chargers really needed was a guy that had a brain in his head and knew how to manage time. And like, Anthony Lynn was one of those guys that I looked at the decisions he made, and I was really scratching my head at some of those decisions he made. Like, every game there was at least one instance where I was like, what is he doing? What is he thinking? And that is something that I said as the casual football fan came out and said that. The Madden 21 video game player came out and said that, like, what are you doing? Like, you should not do that. And it was just really weird, like, the stuff that he did. So, I feel like all the Chargers needed was a guy that had a decent-sized brain in his head. So, I think this Chargers team could be good in maybe next year. I don't know. Like, this team has a lot of talent. They just needed a guy that knows how to be, knows how to manage a football team, because that doesn't seem like something Anthony Lynn knew how to do. So yeah, there you go. That's my thoughts on the Chargers hire. And the Eagles, well, the Eagles went with Nick Sirianni. Sorry, I have to collect my thoughts here. I don't know. Again, this is another one of those guys that I'm not too familiar with. I know that he was the offensive coordinator for the Colts, and honestly, I feel like the Eagles took a look at him and said, well, he worked with Frank Reich. He kind of looks like Frank Reich, so that's about as close as it's gonna get to having Frank Reich back. So let's hire that guy. That sounds good. Like, I feel like there was no motivation and no sense behind this hire. They were just like, well, he worked with Frank Reich. He kind of looks like Frank Reich, so let's hire him. Let's do it. So I don't know. And this is gonna be a generic take, and it's something that it's not like any other person can say this, but this has potential. I don't know. Like, I mean, he took a washed up quarterback in Phillip Rivers, a good running back and some decent receivers, and got that offense to get to a level where they could be a wild card team. So, I don't know. This guy seems like he is competent, and he seems like he knows what he's talking about, and he knows what he's doing. So this could be good for the Eagles. They've got to make a decision on whether or not they want to have Carson Wentz as their quarterback or Jalen Hurts. He's got to make that decision. That's not something that anybody else can make for him. So that is going to that's something that he's going to have to decide. So I don't know. I mean, like, the Eagles, for them being a the for the Eagles to, they're struggling, right? No doubt about it. They finished the year like 4-11-1. The whole division was struggling, right? I mean, we had a 7-9 team win the division and had a home playoff game. So, look, I think that if there was any time to kind of cut your losses and try to start over, I think this is it, because the Eagles, like, if they can get back on track, it's not going to be that difficult for a rebuilding team to win the division next year, I don't think. And for the Eagles, they can do that. I think they can. So, again, time will tell. I think this guy could be a great head coach. I don't know. This is not one of those guys that has been a head coach before. So, and that's kind of a theme that I've just thought about, that I noticed, is that a lot of these guys that got hired for head coaching jobs recently haven't been head coaches before at the NFL level. So this could end up working out tremendously for the Eagles, or it could end up being another failure. I don't know. But their GM or whatever, they've got to get their drafting back on track, because they cannot be making stupid decisions anymore, and blame it on the head coach, unless the head coach comes out and turns out to be an Anthony Lynn kind of guy. So I don't know.